So we're recording, so everybody, welcome to the first live session from ASD. This month is going to be our weird month because this is going to kind of include Thanksgiving, right? So the first thing I wanted to kind of talk about was the due dates of the different assignments. So the one things that haven't really changed are the due dates for these. So all the first kind of stuff, the welcome to the class, has to be done by the 28th, which of course is Thanksgiving. But most of the stuff is very quick. So it's kind of reading it and just making sure that it's called all the basics information, right? So it's nothing too major for it, okay? So the other important thing is week one, which is normally due on Sunday, which Sunday would be the 1st. But since we have that little bit of a break, because we're actually on break for, I think it's the 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th. So I didn't want to make you guys come right back and have everything due on the 1st. So I gave you guys a couple more days, so everything's going to be due on the 3rd of Tuesday. So what that means, though, is week number 2, the due date is just 5 days later. So you have to make sure that you're kind of keeping track of all of it. All right. So don't try to wait on stuff. So if you find yourself having more time, go ahead and work forward. Absolutely, everything is going to be open on day number 1 of this class anyway. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about week number 1 in general. And week number 1 is kind of like all about refreshing you on the basics of object-oriented programming and classes in general, right? So this we talked about in a couple different classes, right? We used to talk about it in SDI, if you guys remember your first programming class, because I used to teach you that one. So we used to cover it in there, and then eventually we started taking that out and putting in another kind of classes. So you guys have had a couple different been exposed to it a couple different times. But we want to make sure that you guys have a refresher of it. So that is basically all code exercise number 1 is. And it's kind of a big exercise. So even though it's a review, it is going to be kind of challenging. So let's go through it and we'll kind of talk about it. So let me go ahead and preview it up. All right, so the other important thing for this one, grading, okay? So the rubric is always super important, so go ahead and take a peek at it. I'll open it over here. The most important thing is you're on the right tab. I see a lot of students being like, I can't figure out which one I'm supposed to do. Here you go, so CE01, right? So this is what we're going to be grading for it. Now, this is important because as long as you make sure that you hit all these different points, you're going to be good, right? The basic instructions for it, of course, are going to be in this file right here, though, okay? So in this one, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating 2 different classes, a food class and an oven class. Now, have you guys dealt with UML before? Do you guys know what UML is? Yes, no. So it's kind of like the markup language where you can actually like visualize what comes in classes and how everything's linked together. Okay, so what we did is we actually created a UML for this, and it's of course at the bottom of this, but I'll pull it up on a separate screen so we can kind of keep going back and forth. Now, UML is great for a number of different reasons. The best reason is, of course, it's the easiest to visualize what you're going to be building. Okay, let me maybe open that up. Come on. There we go. So this is a UML of this program that we're going to be doing. So we're going to be creating a food class and an oven class. Now, how this works is the different things that are going to be the member variables are going to be at the top of it, okay? And then below the line is going to be all of the methods that we're going to be creating for that method as well. For that class as well. Now, the other important thing to notice is that some of these are connected. So you can see that by this dotted line right here, right? So the important thing about the dotted line is you're going to be using this food class inside of the oven class. So you got to make sure that you're going to have the food one done first and then work on the oven class because you're going to need that one in order to do it. So what are we actually building, right? So we're going to be building basically a program that is going to virtually cook, and I'm using like the quotes in the air, kind of like think bunny quotes, right? Cook our food, which we're going to be placing in the different ovens. So for this assignment, we're going to be creating 3 different ovens, okay? Usually it's going to be a normal oven, maybe a convection oven, which uses the circulating air, and a microwave. Right? The only important thing is that you're going to have these 3 different ovens, and you're going to keep track of them in an oven array. So normally before we've seen like string arrays or int arrays or decimal arrays, right? those are all just data types. So this, we're going to be using our custom data type of oven just as an array. So we can keep track of all 3 of those different types of ovens. Okay. Now, each of the ovens is going to be have a couple different things that helps define that oven. The first is, of course, just a text of what type of oven it is. So this would be the microwave, convection, or conventional, right, oven. So that's just kind of a descriptor of what oven type it is. Now, this part is a little weird, and some people have trouble with it. It is a cooking speed. Now, what this means is if a normal oven would take an hour to cook something, right, then it would have a cooking speed of 1. Now, if a convection oven cooks something faster, then you would only have to cook something for a different amount of time, right? If it takes an hour in the normal oven, it might only take, let's say, 40 minutes in a convection oven. So it goes faster. So what this cooking speed is how much faster each oven is than the original, right? So let's say the convection would have a 1.5 multiplier here. So it goes 1.5 times as fast as a convection oven or conventional oven. And maybe the microwave cooks everything at twice the speed. So that would be cook speed of 2 times that. Does that really make sense? So it's how fast something cooks. Now, the next one down there is the usage time. And this is going to be the time that the oven is actually cooking. Now, this is not going to use a timer. I've seen some students try to get really elaborate with this and try to like literally count the seconds somebody put something in, and like it gets really confusing. All it says is when we're actually using an oven, we type in as a user, I'm going to put 20 minutes in this oven, and then that is going to be that usage time. So we're just kind of having the user set the usage time, and we're going to kind of virtually cook something for that amount of time. And then, of course, we're going to have the food class, which is going to be what we're cooking. Now, each food item is going to have their own class, of course. So food class, the name of what we're cooking, the description of what we're cooking. So say it's like pizza, and then the description would be like pepperoni pizza. And then how much time it actually takes to cook, right? So this would be on the box. So say a normal pizza takes 20 minutes to cook or something like that. So that would be the amount of cooking time needed. Okay, so after we have these 2 things created, then we're actually going to start using these things, right? Actually, we should probably go over the class constructors really fast because I did want to make sure we talk about this. Basically, you're going to be using all the data members populated from the parameters. So what that means is you should be creating each individual constructor function, and those are going to be listed right here as well. So food, and you're going to need to bring in a string, and a float in order to set the name, description, and cook time. So this right here is that constructor function to create the food item. And here's the constructor function for our oven, right? We're going to take in a string and a float. So what we're actually doing is we're starting the string name, and the cooking speed is what we're going to be doing the first things, right? So we're setting those. Now, what that means is we have to automatically set the usage time and the food, right? So the usage time, when you start an oven, when you create the oven, that usage time should be defaulting to 0, right? Because we haven't started cooking anything yet. So you're going to set that automatically to 0. And you're not going to start with anything inside of the oven. So the food itself should be set to null. Now, that's going to be super important, so you can do a null check. Does everybody know what a null check is? It basically looks at the variable and sees if it's null, and if it is, then we can actually use that for validation purposes, so we can maybe not cook the oven or not use the oven if nothing's inside of it. Something kind of like that would be a good usage of that. Okay, so that is our constructor functions. Let's see. So that is kind of mentioned here. So the oven will start empty, no food. It's going to be set to null. The oven starts as unused, so that's going to default to 0. And then the rest of those 2 are going to be the parameters coming on in. Now, basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating food items, right? Putting them in an oven, and then using the oven. So all of that is going to be down here in the menu options, right? So we're going to be able to add food to a specific oven. We're going to use that oven, and we're going to remove the food. So basically take it out of the oven and display what's in each of the 3 ovens at one given point. Okay, so there's a couple different things we need to kind of address here. The add food, you should only add food to an oven that is empty. So we can't have two things cooking in the same oven at one time. So make sure that you do that null check, right, to make sure that it's not being used. Once you are going to use the oven, you should only make sure that you use an oven that actually has something in it, right? But you also are going to ask the user what kind of oven they want to use, right? So you're going to give them some kind of numeric menu, like pick 1 for conventional, 2 for convection, and 3 for microwave or something like that, right? So here it kind of talks a little bit about the speed, right, of it. So that's kind of got that cooking speed that we already mentioned, but we'll kind of talk about that once we actually show the program as well. It makes a little bit more sense. And then, of course, once we use the oven, so we're going to say, hey, cook this for 10 minutes, right? Now, what's going to happen there is we're going to be setting that usage time. So that's going to be this. Now, the important thing is when we're checking for food, seeing if it's done or not, right? So that is going to be this is food cooked method. Now, what this is going to do is going to be a bool. So it's going to respond, yes, it's true, it's cooked, or false, no, it's not cooked. And the way we check if something is cooked or not cooked, right, is we're going to be using this usage time. We're going to be multiplying it times that cooking speed, right? And then comparing it against the cooking time of that particular food. So let's use an example. So say I'm making a pizza and the cooking time of that pizza is 20 minutes, okay? I'm going to put it in a normal oven which has a cooking power or cooking speed of 1. So if I cook it for 10 minutes, right, then it still needs to be cooked 10 more to reach that 20 minutes. So if I cook it 15, then it needs 5 more minutes in order to get to that 20. Okay. Now, say I take that pizza and I put it in a microwave, and say the microwave cooks it everything times 2 because it's twice as fast as a normal oven. So if I use a microwave for 10 minutes, I'm going to multiply that times that cooking speed of 2. So it's really like I'm cooking that food for 20 minutes. So if I cook it for 10 minutes in a microwave, it still is the same as being cooked 20 minutes, so that food is done. Does that make sense? This is probably the most confusing part of this for students, I think. Does everybody get what I'm saying? So that's how fast something will cook. Everybody good? Any questions? I'm getting crickets in the chat window. No? Yes? All right. Well, so I guess no news is good news. So if you do have questions, type them in there. Okay, good. Timmy said he understands somewhat, which I will take. It probably is going to be easier if we actually just jump right into the program itself, and then we can kind of explain it as we go along, showing each additional piece as well. Okay. Let me take that off the screen because we're going to show the output, not the code itself, because that's not what you want to see. I mean, it might be what you want to see. All right, so here is an example of the working program. And this is from a student's, this is actually a student's that had the class, I think 3 months ago now, 4 months, something kind of like that. Okay, so when we come up, we start with the main menu. And this, of course, is going to be the menu process right here. So we have our add food, the use the oven, remove food, display the oven contents, and of course our exit. The most important thing here is every prompt needs to be validated. So make sure your validation is correct. This actually is a giant piece of the rubric as well. And a lot of people forget about it, but it is worth 20 points out of the whole thing. So it is 2 letter grades for doing input validation. Now this is going to be super important because you want to make sure that you are getting every single prompt validated against, and there's no way that the user can crash the program, because that's also in here as well, okay? So you want to make sure that they cannot crash the program. So let's go ahead and first try something wrong. So I'm going to type in cat, because it's my favorite thing to type in. Invalid response, won't let me do it. Okay, how about a number that's not on there, like 8? Invalid response, can't do it. Okay, so now I'm pretty convinced that this prompt is going to be validated against, right? So the user has to type in 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and then we'll be good. Now, the next thing I'm going to do as a grading, I would go backwards, and I would try to break this, okay? So I would say, what if I'm going to display the oven contents? Okay, so far, good, right? But what is going to be in these 3 different things? So I want to take a peek in the microwave. Actually, let's type in 6. Oh, not a thing. So we have an invalid type. We've now got to type in 1 to 3. So I'm going to type in microwave 1. And here's the status of the microwave. So the oven type, that's the name of it. The cooking speed is 2, so it cooks everything twice as fast. The cook usage time starts at 0, and there is no food currently in the oven. Okay. Now, if we went to the other ones, it'll say something very similar. Let's go ahead and display that again. Let's look at the traditional one. And you can see this one has a cooking speed of 1, right? So that is the normal one. And then one more time, let's look at the convection. And that's going to have that 1.5 times as fast. Okay, so that is going to be the in-between of those two. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to remove food. Well, which one do you want to remove food from? Now, if you think about it, this really shouldn't even come up. And again, this is a student work. If the program itself knows that all of the ovens are empty, why even ask the user which one of these they would pick, right? Because no matter which one I pick here, there's going to be no food in the oven because we haven't put them in there. The important thing about this, though, is the program itself is not crashing. Super important, right? So it can handle that, okay? How about if I try to use an oven? Okay, how about a microwave? How long would you like to cook for? Why is it even asking me this, right? Because it shouldn't, because there's no real way it can do it. So I'm going to type in 10, and it says, oh, you can't use it because there's no food in the oven, right? But if you think about it, wouldn't it be better to give the user the option of not even using anything because there's nothing in any of the ovens? So why are we actually asking them which oven? Why are we trying to ask how long you want to cook something when nothing exists in there anyway? Okay. Of course, this is acceptable, so I'm not knocking this project, but it might be better to maybe not even give the user the prompt if there's no reason to. Okay, so now we're finally at the add the food, which is the first one. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add that food, and it's going to ask what kind you want to cook, right? So I'm going to try to first leave it blank. So it says, help, can't be blank, and then it restates that question, what kind of food do you want to cook? And I'm going to say, I'm going to cook some tacos. Brief description, I'm going to leave blank. Can't be blank. I'm going to put tasty tacos. There you go. And how long does it take to cook? And of course, this is going to be a number prompt. So, and this student did something interesting, and they gave the user the ability to only type in 1 to 1,440 minutes. So these are going to be those minutes. And the reason they did this is that is going to be those 24 hours, right? So they said we're only going to let people use the oven from a minute to 24 hours. Maybe if you're cooking like a turkey for Thanksgiving or something like that, right? So I'm going to say that these tacos take 10 minutes to cook. And now it's going to ask what oven I would like to put them in. So I'm going to put them in the traditional oven, so 2. And now look, it's giving me that display, and it's actually saying, okay, we have the oven type of traditional, cooking speed of 1. So far, they're uncooked because it is at 0 minutes because I haven't used the oven, but the food is in there, and tacos is going to be inside of that oven. Okay, so now we got it. So now if we look over here, we're inside of our program. We've used our first one, which is going to be those add food. So we now have food inside of that oven. So what does that mean? That means we created a food object from this food class, right? We filled in all the different stuff, and now we're sending it over here into our oven, which is going to be setting this, the member variable, to that particular food item, which is going to be tacos, right? Also notice that the food itself contains that cooking time, right? So that is going to be that getter, right? Because we need to get that cooking time. But notice we don't really need a setter for these things because we're never really giving the user the option to change the food, right? Once we create it. So there's no need for a setter. So this kind of goes into more of the professional mindset that you don't want to give people access to things that they don't use or never will use, right? So for these projects, I would only create getters but no setters for these member variables. Okay, so now we have our oven, we have our food, we have the type, we have that is empty, which is just going to see if the food itself, right, object right here is null or not. That's all it's really going to do is give me a yes, it's null, or no, it's not null, or something like that. Now we have added the food, so we're going to put that food in. So we're bringing that food object in, and we're putting it in that spot right there. And now we can actually use this oven. So let's go ahead and use it. Let's say cook, so we're going to use the oven. Which one do we want to use? So we put that in the traditional oven, so 2. And how long would you like to cook this for? Now remember, the tacos needs 10 minutes to cook. So what happens if I cook it for 5 minutes? Okay, so this says, hey, this still needs to be cooked for 5 more minutes left in the traditional oven. So it's saying you need to cook it for longer. Now, the important thing about that is, what happens if I try to remove the food before it's done? So I'm going to try to remove the food that's in the traditional. It gives me the warning, hey, your food is not done yet. It still has 5 more minutes left that you have to cook it for. Now, this is going to be super important because when you go to remove the food, this is in here somewhere. Let me find it. We're not allowing the user to actually remove food if it's not done. So that's one here somewhere. I don't know, see where it is anymore. It's one of those things like you see it and then you scroll and you can no longer see it ever again. Here we go. Prevent uncooked food from being removed. So because the tacos is not completely cooked, we cannot remove it. All right, so let's go ahead and use the oven again. So we're going to use that oven. Actually, let's do one more thing. Let's display that oven contents. So I'm going to do 4. I'm going to peek inside that traditional oven. And if you notice here, food in the oven tacos, cooking time is 5 minutes. There is one thing that I probably would add to this, and I suggest you guys add to this, and that would be in the display method over here for the food, because I would say the amount of time actually needed to cook. So somewhere in here, I would say tacos needs 10 minutes to cook, and it's only had 5 minutes, right? So I would kind of put those. Okay, let's go ahead and finish this up. So we're going to use that oven. Traditional. I'm going to cook it for 5 more minutes. And now it gives me that thing because it does this little check over here. It says, is that food cooked? And it says your food is finished being cooked. So now that is set to true. It's now done. So now that means we can go to the remove method, remove that traditional, and the tacos is going to be removed from the oven. And the only reason it was allowed to be removed is because it was completely cooked. Okay? Everybody with me so far? Everybody good? Let's go ahead and try something in the microwave. So I'm going to do add food. What are we going to cook? I'm going to say some beef brisket. Something kind of like that. Brief description. I'm going to put, how about maybe meat. There you go. Meat. And how long does it take to cook? Let's say this one takes 100 minutes. And we're going to put it in the microwave. All right. So we have beef brisket inside of there and meat. Oh, I just noticed something actually wrong. Do you guys notice it's not actually displaying the full thing? Because I typed in beef brisket and only typed out beef brisket. So make sure yours types out everything. Now it's going to go ahead and use that oven. So we're going to say use the microwave. Remember, it needed 100 minutes. So I'm going to say, what about 40 minutes? So your food still needs to be cooked 10 more minutes. Now, if you think about that, I only cooked it for 40 minutes, right? So why does it say I need 10 more minutes? Anybody get it? Because how fast is the microwave? Twice as fast. So really, how many minutes will it take to cook? Instead of 100 minutes, it only takes 50 minutes to cook this beef brisket in the microwave. So when I used it 40 minutes, that's saying, hey, you only need 10 more minutes, right? Because in me, I cook twice as fast. Does everybody see how that kind of comes into play? Does that make more sense when you actually see it? Everybody good? Good. Perfect. Okay, so after that, let's go ahead and finish this up. So we're going to say use that, use the oven. Let's cook it in the microwave. Let's cook it, I don't know, 15 more minutes. You can overcook stuff, but that's okay. And now that one's going to be done. But I'm not going to remove it yet. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to add more food. And let's say this one's going to be a pizza. Let's go with sausage. How long is it going to take to cook? Let's say 20 minutes. I'm going to stick it in the convection oven. And there you go. So now let's display the oven contents. What do we got in the traditional? Oops, no food in the oven. Okay. How about if I display what's in the microwave? Oh, well, that is going to be our beef brisket. And right now we have 190 minutes cooking. So that's fine. Then let's go ahead and display one more time, the convection. And that's our pizza, but it's still frozen because we have 0 time. All right. So now just showing that I can have multiple ovens going at the same time. Now all I'm going to do is just going to remove I forgot what I put that in, microwave, I think. Yeah. And I removed the beef brisket from the microwave. And that will set that back to null because now something else can be put inside of it. All right. So I think that kind of goes through each of the different methods we talked about, right? So adding, remove, food, cooking it, right? So cooking, we're just bringing in time to use this usage time. That's pretty much about it. Does anybody have any kind of questions about this? Or does it make more sense when you actually see it? Like a working example? Any questions that I can answer about CE01? And I would highly suggest that you use the UML and make sure that you kind of check your code against it, because it's really a nice way to kind of see it visually, which I think a lot of people really need. Okay. However, I do want to strongly suggest that you start thinking of your own UMLs. And what I mean by that is, for the first couple programs, we're going to be giving you these UML documents, right? Saying, hey, this is the program class, here's the other classes, here's what you need. But at the end of this, in week 3, I think it starts, we do not give you the UML, and you have to create them, right, for your own. Now, how I did these is these are done in draw.io. It's a free program. You can input stuff, you can output stuff. It's really great. So if you create a new diagram, you can do, let's pick UML. You can choose one of these existing ones. You can just make your own. You can do whatever you'd like, because it's basically your version of what you want to do. Right? So here is the example that we used. All we did was just kind of create the different colors and stuff to make it a little bit easier to see. But basically, it's a point and click, kind of like double click inside of it, and you can stick it in there and stuff like that, right? I do want to cover one more thing about these. You'll notice that there is minus signs and plus signs. So the minus sign means private, and the plus ones mean public. So that's going to help you try to figure out what visibility each one of these has, right? So minus is private and pluses are public, okay? So that's a little secret for you too. If you guys have any more questions about UML diagrams, there's plenty of tutorials online, so Google it, super easy. Basically, the main thing you want to make sure that you're doing is that you kind of help you organize your thoughts so then you can help make your code, right? So it shouldn't take you a long time to create these UMLs, because really they're just brainstorming to help you kind of organize things. The other kind of cool thing about this draw.io is when you move something, once you connect it, it can actually still go with it. So notice those dotted lines will still stick with it. So this would actually mean that this interface is being used inside of this class and blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's how it's connected. Okay, so everybody good? So it already says not at the moment. They don't have questions yet, so I think we're good. Let me go ahead and close CE01, and we'll open CE02. Boop. Now, CE02 is all about inheritance. Now, inheritance is when one class actually inherits stuff from a different class. So it basically extends the class for you. All right, let me doing stuff on my other screen real quick, because I'm just trying to close that one and trying to open CE02. Hold on a minute, things are getting stuck. And again, this is going to be one of those student assignments too, so I'll pull it up here in just a minute. And I'll also pull up the UML diagram for it. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here, and of course the rubric is of course over here just on CE02, so you can kind of keep track of that one to making sure that you're doing it. Remember, input validation is again 20 points, so make sure you're doing that as well. Okay, every prompt, all the time. So what we're going to be doing here, kind of a quick little brief glance at the UML, is we're going to be creating this base person class, because from that base class, what we're going to do is we're going to create a student class and a teacher class. And both a student and a teacher are a person. So what that means is we don't really have to remake all these member variables for a name, a description, and age, because the student is going to have a name, a description, and age. Each teacher is going to have a name, a description, and age. So why not just create the person class and then extend it into different classes? Right? So you'll also notice here that instead of these dotted lines, we have solid arrows. And what that means is this class is then extended into this class. So that's what the solid arrows are going to mean in this one. Okay. And of course, we have our constructor functions for the person and our display method for everything inside of here. Okay. Now, the thing about this is the students are going to have everything a person has, except they're also going to have an integer that's going to keep track of their grade. So each student is going to be having a grade. Now, the teacher is going to have everything a person has, but notice it doesn't have a grade because it's a teacher. Instead, we're going to have a string array of the different knowledge things they possess. So different knowledge that they possess. So there's a couple different ways to do this when you're actually creating a teacher. One, you could ask them for a comma separated list, and then people can just kind of put as many skills as they want. Or you could ask the user, hey, how many skills would you like to assign to your teacher? make it 3, and then you can then fill in this array based on that number that you're getting from the user. Okay, but don't assume that there's a specific number of abilities that they have. So don't let every teacher only have 2 abilities, right? Because somebody has like 18 abilities or something like that. So they need those kind of different stuff. Okay, but this right here is the inheritance, right? The person going to the student and the person going to the teacher. The other kind of big thing about this one is make sure that you are utilizing these particular member variables. So when you go to create a student, you still need to have the name, the description, and the age, but you're going to also need that grade as well. The key thing about these 3 member variables is that they get sent back to the base. So that's going to be the important part. You're going to send them back to the base. Now, base, of course, is the person, which is going to keep track of those 3 things. And same thing for the teacher. Notice you're going to need the string double 2 strings. So that's going to be the name, the description, sorry about that, and the age. But notice the knowledge doesn't have to come along with it because we can always add that in later as well. So we're going to use that kind of setting that knowledge string array. We can just use that as a getter and a setter. Okay, so that's one of those times that you would actually need to have a getter and a setter. Going back. So what we're building here is we're building basically a course tracker. So we're going to be creating this course that's going to have a string for the course title, so whatever the course is actually named, a string for the course description, so a little bit more about that course. We're going to assign a teacher. So notice over here, we have that dotted line. So saying, hey, you're going to use this class inside of this course class. So we're assigning that teacher, and then we're going to assign a student array. This one's going to be kind of important as well. So notice it's just like any other array, string array, int array, except this time we're using the custom data type of student. So for this one, what we need to do is we need to be able to bring in the number of students for this course. So when we're actually creating this course, it's going to say, hey, how many students are going to be in the course? Maybe 3 students. So that is going to be in this constructor function, right? So we're setting, hey, here's the title of the course, here's the description of the course, and here's the number of students in the course. But notice this int is not one of the member variables. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to use this integer as the length of the student array. So we're going to initialize this student array with that many students. That's one of the tricky points for this assignment. I find a lot of students kind of struggle with. Okay, so we're going to use that int to set that one. Then, of course, we're going to have a couple methods inside of here to set the teacher. We're bringing in the teacher, setting it, and we're going to set the students by bringing in that whole student array and setting it to the student array. Okay, and then, of course, we're going to have the display, which will display everything as we go along. And then on our program side, these are going to be all of the different menu options. So we're going to be able to create the course, create a teacher, add the students to the course, and finally display that course and, of course, our exit button. You know, we didn't test that one for the oven assignment, but we'll make sure we test it for this one. Okay. That's pretty much a summary of all the different stuff inside of here. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into a working example, because I think that's usually the easiest way to kind of explain it. Let me drag it on the screen. So here's going to be our main menu. So notice we have our create course, create teacher, add students, and display. And of course our exit. So first thing I'm going to try to do is break it. So type in cat. Oops, not valid. Okay, how about 8? Oops, not a valid choice. All right. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is try to go backwards. So I'm going to try to display this. Now you're going to say, why would you hit that? Because we haven't created anything. But that's exactly it, right? What should happen here is that you have to create the course before you actually do anything else. So this is using a null check. And what that's checking against is this member variable, the current course, which is going to be that whole course inside of our thing. So if this is null, as it should start with, then you should not allow the user to actually display anything because there's nothing to display. Does that make sense? This one is the number one thing that causes crashes inside of students' work. Okay, so I try to display it before doing anything else, and it goes and it just goes apart, and everything kind of falls, and then you lose all your points for that no crashing for the validation. Okay, so make sure you're doing that. What if I try to add students? Oh, please create a course. What if I try to create a teacher? Well, you don't have a course, so none of those options will work. So let's go ahead and create the course. 1. What is the name of the course? Blank. Oh, can't leave it blank. So this course is going to be ASD. what is the description of this course? So we're going to say advanced C#. Let's make it easy. How many students? Let's leave it blank. Oh, nope. So you can only have 1 to 25 students because this student made up those rules, right? But in Full Sail, we can only have 25 students per course, so that kind of makes sense. So he's limiting that, right, and validating against it. So I would type in like 42, it'll give me that error, and it'll say, hey, you can only do 1 to 25. Okay, so I'm going to type in, let's do 3 students. We'll say that. New course created, and ASD has been created. We're good. So now what happens if I try to display it? Well, now it's going to give me the information that it has. So it's going to say, hey, here's the current course. I have the name, the description. I have no teacher, and I know the number of students. But do I know the students yet? No, I haven't really created those, them and their names, their ages, their descriptions, and their grades. So I have nothing really to display, except that I know that there's 3 students in this course. But notice that it did not crash. This, again, is one of those null checks. And what happens is if the current teacher is null, right? So we're going to look inside of the current course, check this teacher variable, and if it's null, we don't have a teacher, so we have to give the user some kind of output for that. And same thing if the student array doesn't have anything inside of it, then that's the same thing, okay? Let's go ahead and create a teacher. I'll be the teacher for this, so I'm going to leave it blank. Nope, okay. Dan, my description, I'm going to put it's me. Age, rude, 41. Teacher skill sets. Now this student decided to do separated by commas, right? So we're going back to SDI in our string methods, and what the student is doing is using that split method in order to split it apart at every single comma. So I'm going to say I'm good at, let's say, JavaScript, let's say ActionScript, because that's totally what I started here when I got started at Full Sail. Let's say I'm good at C#. What else am I good at? Let's say design. Okay. And there we go. New teacher has been created. What about if we display it? Well, now that it has more information, here's the basic current course stuff, and notice now it displays the teacher information. This one student has a little bit of a weird space in here, so you might want to make sure that that's fixed. It's just because the student has a little bit off on its table settings, so that's kind of what's going on here. So make sure that you fix that. So here's my different skill sets. Notice it lists them out. So I used a loop to go through and make sure all my skill sets are listed out here. And of course, we don't really have anything for the students yet, so it's just going to keep that, hey, I know there's 3 and they're going to come in eventually. All right, let's fill in the roster. So we're going to add those students to it. What's the name of the student number 1? All right, so we can't leave it blank. So we're going to take Aubrey, because she's in this class right now. All right, we're going to say brief description. I'm just going to put, it's Aubrey. All right, age, I'm going to make one up for you. So you're automatically going to be 24, enjoy. And now I'm going to make a grade for Aubrey, right? So I think she's going to be, let's say 89. Doing good, solid B+. How about a student number 2? Okay, well, that's going to be Timmy. So Timmy, we're going to put, it's Timmy. There we go. We're going to say he is 32. And what happens if we try to type in a grade that's outside of 0 to 100? Let's say 145. Oh, it reprompts us. Why? Well, the highest you can get in the class is 100, so you can't type in 145 out of 100. So it doesn't make sense. So that validation comes back into play where it only will accept 0 to 100. All right, so Timmy's doing good, so we're going to give him a 91. All right, student number 3, we're going to say his name is Bob. We're going to say it's Bob. Bob's going to be, let's say he's 28. What does he get? He's failing the course, so he's going to get a 78. There we go. All right, so notice that it automatically prompted for 3 students, because we told it when we first started it that, hey, we're going to have 3 students. So it knew how many times to loop through and fill in that student array. That one, right? Now, when we go to display this, Timmy, I just saw that. He put, I wish, right? 91 is going to be happening. So here we go. We have now displayed all the current course information. Here's the name and the description. The teacher information now, because we have everything inside of there. And now we have all the students in the different course. So student number 1 is going to be Aubrey. It's Aubrey. Here's her age and grade. 2 is Timmy. And 3 is Bob. So that is pretty much the whole entire program, right? Now, of course, if we're going to be creating a new course, if I go back to number 1, then that's going to wipe out this current course. So it's also going to totally wipe out the description, the name, the teachers, and the students as well. So it's basically a way to restart this from scratch, okay? So if you wanted to see what that looks like, what is the name of the course? SDI, C# basics. How many people in the course? 2. And there's the course. So now if we go to display it, notice now we only get the SDI information with no teacher assigned and no students. Okay. And then of course we're going to test this. So I'm going to say 5 to exit. And then it stops our program. And there we go. Okay. Does everybody kind of get what we're doing for that assignment? Any questions on CE02? Any questions? Probably the trickiest part is going to be that sending it back to the base, right? So what I kind of want to do is, I don't want to give you code because I hate that, which is why I won't show you code. What I'm going to do is kind of give you an example of what I mean, and hopefully that will kind of get it working for you, get your minds thinking. So what I mean by setting it back to the base, it's going to be something kind of like this. So this should look a little bit familiar once you get there, right? So you're going to be sending back the name, description, and age to the base. And remember, the base we're talking about is this person, because student and teacher are built upon the person class, right? So student and teacher are built on it, which is why we call this the base in this chain of inheritance going upwards, okay? So you want to make sure that you're sending back this name, description, and age, sending them into this constructor function. But instead of calling that constructor function, you're going to be calling that base. That's kind of the key thing about that. Okay. I find a lot of students, especially when they're starting out, weird inheriting things, that's going to be their big thing right there. Okay. All right. Let's delete that. And any questions? So Aubrey says no questions right now. And I think we are good. All right, so probably CE01 is going to take the most time because it is fairly complex. So make sure that you leave a lot of time for that one. CE02, it's going to be a little bit faster, but you need to kind of make sure you watch all of this research for the inheritance before trying to attempt it. Also, remember that you should be turning in your research. So what that means is you should be uploading either a C# file that you're coding along with the different videos, or a PDF or a Word document of the notes that you are taking for each one of these research assignments. And then, of course, we have our comprehension quiz for number 1 as well. Key things, because this is a weird month, remember everything is going to be due that December 3rd, so you have a couple extra days, because normally it would be due December 1st, so you get 1-2 more extra days, so enjoy it. Enjoy that little holiday break. But remember, week number 2 sneaks up quick with that December 8th, because we're going back to that Sunday due date. Okay, so make sure that you keep track of that. Aubrey has a quick question. She says, do we want both a PDF of the notes and code, or one or the other? That is up to you. You just have to prove that you did the research. So whatever method you think shows your best proof that you have been doing the research, upload that. Or both. I don't really care. Just upload something, right, that shows that you're doing stuff. Okay? And remember, all of this stuff starts building on each other. So do not try to jump ahead in doing stuff, because you'll just get confused. And make sure that you fully master your inheritance, because when we start going down, you're going to be using inheritance inside of your debugging assignment, inside of your generics and collections and stuff like that, inside of your dictionaries. So it's going to be kind of a thing that you have to make sure that you fully understand classes and objects before moving forward. Okay? All right. So if you guys are watching this later on YouTube and you guys have questions, sign on to Slack, go into the ASD channel, and ask away. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.